Welcome to Dave Examines Movies and TV, where today I examine Monsters vs. Aliens, a movie that's great for both kids and adults as they can appreciate the creature feature knowledge behind everything. But what about those adults that haven't seen the creature features? Hey, I'm Dave, and I created DaveExaminesMovies.com. I've been reviewing movies for over a decade, and I believe I've discovered the ultimate method for reviewing film. I've always used a 1 out of 100 star rating, but somehow that was still too biased and inaccurate for my taste. I wanted something so unquestionable that even if you hated something that I loved, you could appreciate my logic, and I found it. I call it Interpreting the Stars, which splits a movie into 10 categories, 5 solid categories that fit into any movie, and 5 specialty categories for the movie at hand. The first 5 categories are people, writing, behind the scenes, narrative arc, and overall entertainment. Each of these categories will have 5 subcategories of their own that ultimately define the star rating of the film. You'll no longer have to ask why a film's rated 76% versus 77. You'll now know what each and every star represents. This is Interpreting the Stars. Or Dave Examines Movies and TV, sorry. Boy, today is, I don't know if there's a full moon or like we're getting abducted by the aliens in this movie or what, but today has been a strange day. I mean, only just since noon, because I started recording a live episode, this live episode, then. And I guess I was recording for 20 minutes and everything, which is fine. You know, I was recording for 20 minutes, and because it's lunchtime, I was making myself some pizza. And I still have to cut the pizza now, but so I thought, okay, I'm recording. I took out my headphones on this app for recording the podcast. And then I guess it decided once you took off the app, or the headphones, it would immediately stop recording and you couldn't continue the recording at all. So that happened, so I had to start all over, and I had to start over a couple times because I just couldn't get it right. Anyways, now that that's over, I am going to, once again, start talking about monsters versus aliens. I'm going to continue to keep my headphones plugged in because when you take them out, all hell breaks loose. Okay, so let's talk about monsters versus aliens. But first, I want to say hi to any of those that are just tuning in for the first time with Dave Examines Movies. I wish I could go through my history with you and tell you where I started out 10 years ago, because it's an interesting story, but we just don't have the time. Maybe one of these days I'll just have a special podcast episode out there dedicated to, you know, how I started out and everything, and how I got from A to B. But until then, I'm going to talk about Monsters vs. Aliens. Now, since I'm cutting my pizza right this second, I don't have the webpage open to tell you what it's about. But I'll tell you in my own words what it's about. So a meteor strikes down, and this one normal girl who's getting married to this really awful guy, she gets struck by the meteor, and apparently the meteor had some magical properties to it, because she ended up being 50, feet tall, or I don't know the actual dimensions, what they call her. She's based off of the 50-foot woman. So she turns into that, so she can't get married, obviously. But that's okay, because the guy was evil. Well, not evil, just rude, just jerk. And so she gets, kidnapped by some government folks, and she's forced to be imprisoned by the government, and her roommates are Bob, which is basically the Blob of the Universal monster movies. After that, you have the Dr. what is it? Dr. Cockroach, who is basically based off of the Fly movie. You have, obviously, the girl, who is based off of the 50-foot tall woman, or whatever it was called. So the Blob, and there's a big worm-like character, which I believe is based off of Godzilla. So you have all these characters and everything, and they are put to use when, all random like, the world is attacked, or at least, yeah, pretty much attacked by aliens. And that's basically the movie, right? So you got the monsters versus the aliens and a story. Okay. I believe that IMDb has it rated at like 6.5 out of 10. And I have it rated slightly higher. So let's get into the categories here. The first category for my review is people, as always. And people is split up into 5 subcategories of acting, characters, casting, importance, and chemistry. So let's get into it. First one's people or acting. How's the acting? Well, I mean, we have great actors that are involved. If you don't know who they are, let me ring it up again, because apparently I lost it. What a weird day. You got Reese Witherspoon as the 50-foot woman, or Ginormica, sorry. You have Seth Rogen as Bob, the Blob. You have Hugh Laurie as Dr. Cockroach, or, the Fly. And you have Will Arnett as the Missing Link, otherwise known as the creature from the Black Lagoon. Kiefer Sutherland's in there as a military guy. Rainn Wilson, Stephen Colbert, Paul Rudd, Jeffrey Tambor, Amy Poehler, Ed Helms, Renee Zellweger, John Krasinski. The list goes on. There's a lot of people in this movie. So anyways, but what about the acting? You know that they are good actors. Does that mean that it translates to good acting in this movie? I can't really say that. I don't think I noticed anything specifically as far as good acting is considered. Animated films do have good acting sometimes, so don't get me wrong. But this time I think it was mostly typical for just a fun, kids movie. So for this, I'll give it 1 out of 2 stars. Acting's 1 out of 2. Next up is characters. How are the characters? Well, could be better. I'm just kidding. The characters are awesome. You had a lot of memorable characters, colorful characters, unique characters, diverse characters. They are easy to look at. You can remember what they look like. Kids will love them. So yeah, characters are easily a 2 out of 2. Same with casting. Casting is a 2 out of 2. I already told you the cast there. It was a stellar cast, and not only that, that's not what wins me over. What wins me over is these characters seem to be written for that cast. That means that nobody else could play these characters for obvious reasons. So casting's 2 out of 2 stars. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Alright. Importance. How important are the characters? Well, the first time I was doing this review, I made sure to tell you that, yes, there are clearly important sequences in this movie because of the characters. All the characters are diverse, and they have a role to play. However, it could have been better, and it could have been better because they focused way too much on Gigantor Lady, or whatever her name is, Ginormica, and not enough on the other creatures. If they had equal focus on all of these people, or creatures, I think it could have gone over better. That's why for the importance, I'm going to say 1 out of 2. If I personally think it could have been better, and I list off reasons, it's 1 out of 2. Chemistry. How is the chemistry? The chemistry is good. You can't always get chemistry with animated film, but I think they did it here. The voice actors obviously had chemistry with each other when talking, and whoever the animators are, you did a great job at, visually recreating just chemistry and what that means for characters. So, chemistry is 2 out of 2 stars. That brings the people score as a whole up to 8 out of 10 possible stars, which is a good start. So let's go on to the next category of writing. Writing, once again, 5 subcategories there. We have dialogue, we have balanced, we have story, originality, and interesting. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, the dialogue. How was the dialogue? Well, it's an animated film, which means the dialogue needs to be very important, needs to be very focused on. You don't really have the luxury of having body language or anything, because animated body language is a little bit different than real human interaction body language. So how was it here? Not the greatest. I will say that I don't really remember any of the lines in this movie. So no memorable lines. It's not a musical, so you can't use that as a dialogue. So for the most part, 1 out of 2 stars for dialogue, nothing important there. Balance. How balanced is the story? Well, it was almost perfectly balanced until they ruined it by having a false ending and having another ending after it. Kids don't really understand that. They think the movie's over and then it's not. So for the most part, I gave Balance 1 out of 2 stars. I could go on and on about it, but really it comes down to that. Plus I already did this before. Story, 1 out of 2 stars for story. Why? Because in the end, it doesn't mean anything. There's no meaning behind the story of what's really happening here. You could say maybe bravery, maybe teamwork, but for the most part, there's nothing that. There's not even being true to yourself, because in my opinion, the true version of yourself is what you were born with, and Ginormica was born as a normal human being woman. And she was. So, I can't say be true to yourself. I'm just going to say the story's 1 out of 2 stars, because, could have been better there, but it could have been way better there. Originality. Again, it comes down to 3 things. First of all, it's based off of the old creature features back in whenever it was that they came out in. But at the same time, there is a uniqueness about it when it comes to them coming together to team up, and as well as the aliens. That's unique too. So this is a clear yes and no thing, and I'm gonna have to say 1 out of 2 stars for that. Is it interesting? Yeah, I think it is. I like the concept of them coming together. I think a lot of the characters in general are memorable. I like how colorful it is, and kids will clearly like it. So, interesting. 2 out of 2 stars for that. What does that bring the writing score up to? Well, it brings it up to 6 out of 10 possible stars. So not as great as The People, which was 8. That brings up the subtotal to 14 out of 20. Let's keep on going. So we're at 14. We're going on to BTS, Behind the Scenes. So what is behind the scenes, my friends? Well, behind the scenes is visuals, the directing, the editing, the advertisement, and the music. So let's get into it. Visuals. It is an animated film, but have you ever seen an animated film that wasn't impressive with the visuals? I have, and this was not one of those. This was actually good visuals. Like I said, colorful, memorable character designs, memorable, even aliens when it comes down to it. But it kind of goes deeper into that. So if you're familiar with the creature features of the past and how they changed these characters for a modern day approach and how they work well together in a visual setting, is all very important to take notice. If you don't know the creature features, you can still appreciate the visuals for how they are, but if you do, it's kind of cool to see how they all come together. and all fit together visually. So I would say 2 out of 2 stars for that. Next up is directing. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The directing for animated films doesn't really make sense to me. The scriptwriter tells the story, and the director tells it visually. And how can a director really tell it visually when he has no control over much of anything? The people who are creating the CGI work a really long time just on one scene, and they have to make it perfect. If the director doesn't like how it looks, they might be able to swap the camera around, but that's all they can really do. So I don't think the director has much pull. So for that, I'm going to give it 1 out of 2 stars. For the editing, it's a kids' movie. The animators pretty much decided beforehand how they want the movie to look, even if by help from the director. I think the editor has even less to do. So 1 out of 2 stars. Advertisement. Is it as advertised? I'll just say yes. It was as advertised. 2 out of 2 stars. I remember the trailers, and I also remember going there in the theater, so I remember it as I remember it. Advertisement was 2 out of 2. Music. It's not a musical, and for the most part, it's just comical music playing here and there, just like you normally would expect for an animated film like this. Nothing particularly impressive here. 1 out of 2 stars for it not really being memorable. That brings our BTS behind the scenes score up to 7 out of 10 possible stars, and our subtotal up to 21 out of 30 possible stars. I know, I kind of sped through all that, but that's because I don't like re-recording stuff I've already talked about like 10 minutes ago. Alright, so now I think we're on to the area that I wasn't at before, so clap your hands, we're here. Narrative arc score. That brings, the narrative arc is always important, guys, because when you're watching a movie and you feel like something's off, it could be this, so let's get into it. The introduction, the inciting incident slash crossing of the threshold, the obstacles, the epiphany slash the climax, and the falling action. So let's dig in here. So what's the introduction? The introduction was mostly introducing you to Ginormica before she was Ginormica. Her and her jerk of a husband who's all about himself. Fiance. They didn't actually get married. It introduces us to them. And everything, and kind of gives you an idea of what's going on in the world, but not too much more than that. I want to say that it also introduces you to the other creatures, but that's what we're going into now. The inciting incident, it's a confusing one, because it's either when she gets struck by a meteor and can't go back because she's now this big old powerful ginormical woman, either that's the inciting incident, or the inciting incident is after she meets the other creatures and the U.S. needs their help because of the alien invasion. It could be either or, and because of that, confusion that I have with what's going on, I have to give it 1 out of 2 stars because it's not a clear inciting incident. Obstacles, that one's more clear. We're talking about the monsters versus aliens, Bing Bang Boom. Lots of stuff is going on there. They have their own abilities and things that they're good at, and they use them. So the obstacles is easy enough, 2 out of 2 stars. How about the climax? Like I said before, there's like a false ending in there that feels like it already ends, and then it keeps on going for a second one. So for that, I have to give it 1 out of 2 stars. I always give that 1 out of 2 stars when you have that false ending. Falling action. Well, take it. I'm going to try to simplify this as much as humanly possible. There's 2 endings, okay, and they use all of their power to just do these 2 endings, and because of that, you kind of don't care as much about the climax. And the climax, while it is there, you almost feel like it's anticlimactic because it's there. It's just there, and you're bored at this point. And there's almost no falling action. There is a little bit, but very little. So for the climax and for the falling action, I gave them both 1 out of 2 stars. That brings the narrative arc score up to 7 points as well, which brings it up to, I believe, 28 out of 40. Okay, well, now we're on to the last of the main categories here. The last of those are the entertainment score, which brings into 5 subcategories of rewatchability, how fun it is, the impulse to buy, the impulse to talk about, and it sucks the audience in. So let's talk about how entertaining it is, because the entertainment score is always the hardest for me to actually give points to, because, I mean, it is important, but a lot of movies just kind of lack that department. So let's talk about the rewatchability. I would say it's 2 out of 2 stars for that. It's a rewatchable movie, even though it took me like 7-8 years to watch for the second time. I would still consider it an enjoyable enough movie to rewatch it. So I give that 2 out of 2 stars. Next up is it a fun movie? Well, a lot of animated movies are definitely fun, and this is as well. It's a fun movie. I had fun watching it. So 2 out of 2 stars there. I could go into detail, but I don't want to. Do I have an impulse to buy it? Not when I first watched it, and not when I watched it for the second time. It's not a buyable movie, I don't think. It's definitely a rentable movie that you can go out and you can try to find to watch it again, but I just don't see it as something that you would want to own. So 0 out of 2 stars for that. Do you have an impulse to talk about it? Sort of, but not, like, you can discuss a lot about the creature features and this, and how they are similar and how they are different, and I feel like that's a cool discussion point, but I have no, like, urge to talk to anyone, if that makes sense. 1 out of 2 stars. Does it suck the audience in? Kind of. Again, it kind of does, but it, and that's only for some really great sequences in the movie. The rest don't really suck you in, so I'm going to say 1 out of 2 stars there as well. So let's see, entertainment score is now 6 out of 10 possible stars. We're at 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34 out of 50 there. So let's talk about the specialty categories that I wrote before watching the movie. These are always important. Okay. First one I always ask, it comes down to the level of kids versus family. Will the family, the adults that are watching with their kids, be appreciated as well as the kids that are watching it? I will, because I will say that the parents will appreciate the shout-outs to the classics. I said before, will the adults that never saw the creature features understand it? For me, I'm saying they will, because I never saw those creature features, ever. I never did. I never saw those movies. But I know a lot about them. And maybe that's just because I like movies and I appreciate the history of film. But most people understand some of those creatures. And they've heard at least the phrase, the creature of the Black Lagoon. Even the Blob, I swear people know what these things are because they had video games dedicated to them. The Fly, they remade The Fly. So I would say that they'd at least half appreciate it. So I'd say 10 out of 10 there. How about kids today? When I do say kids today, I mean I had my kid plop down next to me and watch it, and he watched it all the way through. So when I see that, I say that it is Liam approved, and it is 10 out of 10 stars. I'm not going to get into it. He basically decides for me. 10 out of 10. How about moral to the story? Like I was talking before about the story, it has nothing that's truly apparent here. And for kids' movies, they almost always have a moral to the story, but they didn't really here. Like I said, you might be able to grasp at straws and say team or bravery or something, but it's just so basic. It's just nothing specific to the movie. So 0 out of 10 stars. Do we have relevant bad guys? I mean, you had memorable creature features for the monsters, but what about the bad guys? What about the aliens? This is something that I wanted to see. Were they relevant? Because you had historical good guys. What about historical bad guys? What about the aliens? I would say that there was shout-outs to a couple things. There was shout-out to War of the Worlds. There was a shout-out to Third Encounters. But I think that's it. I think the rest of it's just typical. I may be wrong here because I might not have the best knowledge and memory of old Alien movies. But I think for the most part, it was focused more on the monsters aspect. So I would say that 5 out of 10 is probably the most accurate because the monsters were clearly what it was about, not the aliens. But there was World of World stuff in Third Encounter, so cool enough. Does it hold a memory? Like I said, it was pretty much how I remembered it, so I'm going to just easily just say it was 10 out of 10. That's where I normally say was it halfway decent. And for this, 10 out of 10. That brings the specialty category up to a possibility of 35 out of 50 stars. And that brings us to our ultimate total for the movie, which is 69%. 69 out of 100 possible stars, and that's your rating for the movie. Like I said, IMDb was 65. I'm 69. I'm pretty much right in there. It's an okay kids movie. Like, I think kids will definitely still appreciate it if they're watching it. When they're adults, they can appreciate the monster parts, but it's not enough to make an adult want to see it again. You know what I mean? But a kid, maybe. So it's an okay movie. If you watch it in 3D, it'll definitely like explode out at you and everything, which is, if you like that kind of thing, there you go. If you don't, it might give you a headache. So that. Anyways, tomorrow will be the final will be the final Kids Week movie, and that's going to be on Mona. And not only that, I'm going to tell you everything that's going on next week, because next week is Wife's Choice. My wife picked out a whole bunch of movies for me to check out with her, and that's what we're doing next week. So maybe she'll pop in for the TV episode, maybe she won't. I don't know what her plans are or anything, but I'll ask her if she wants to join and everything. Other than that, yeah, that's what's going to be going on tomorrow. Also, like I said earlier, you can subscribe to this podcast on pretty much every podcast server out there. I got it on Google Play. I got it on Stitcher, on iTunes. It's on SoundCloud now. And if you have a third-party podcast application on your phone, all you got to do is search for me. I will probably pop up on something that they have. So look out for that. You can find my website, daveexaminesmovies.com. I'm on Twitter, IAMDWG. I'm on Track TV, IAMDWG. You can check out what I'm watching and follow along with me there. Otherwise, you can email me at dave@daveexaminesmovies.com if you have any questions and or concerns, or you want me to review a specific movie. Ask me, and I'll definitely look into it. Other than that, subscribe, like it, and comment on it. And I'll see you guys tomorrow with last year's big Disney hit, Mona. Peace out.
Dave examines movies we just watch for fun. Davey is the expert. He is the #1 critic that I go to when I need a movie pick. Thanks for joining up with us. We think you're pretty slick.